But it basically works, right? Like we're pulling information. We have a little node server running. I could host this on Vercel or somewhere and make it live, and people could come to my site and read Reddit. Hey, Vibe Code adventurers. I'm going to create a web scraper, and I'm doing this completely off the cuff. I don't know how to do this yet, except my programmer intuitions. And I'm going to choose a website, Reddit / programmer humor, and we're going to figure out how to download these posts and get them into a JSON file. So JSON is a JavaScript object notation file that is easy for code to read. And maybe we'll have URLs for these images rather than downloading the images, and then see if we can make a little page that just shows the posts that are in Programmer Humor. And we can either download them to our computer or just reference the posts remotely so that we just show what is currently on Reddit. But we'll have to learn about how these posts are formatted and whatnot. So like I said, I've never done this before with Reddit. I've written scrapers and cloners before, but I haven't done it with Reddit. And so you're going to get to see my learning process, my exploration. So I'm here in Visual Studio Code. I'm just going to start up Claude. And we're going to rely really heavily on Claude to figure this out. And you will see how that works. So I usually just start conversationally. Like, I want to create a website that mirrors a particular Reddit feed. Let's start with, and I'm going to drop that URL in there. We'll need to get references to the images and text in that feed, and what they call them, subreddit, and make a site that displays the same content. So that's pretty high level. I want to create a website that mirrors a particular Reddit feed. We'll start with this one. We need to get references to the images and text in the subreddit. Make a site. So I'm going to specify we're not going to save the data ourselves. We just want to create a feed that we can host on our own site that will show Reddit content. Yeah, and I'm not even sure if it will work that way. We might have to change our tactic as we go. I would expect cross-origin request errors, CORS. So I'm going to mention that to it now. Will we run into CORS issues with this approach? And what would you think is the best way to accomplish a generalized Reddit reader type site? All right, let's see what he has to say. It's deliberating. So one thing that came to my mind while I was writing that prompt is so interesting. It's going to try to look with .json on the end. Doesn't really make any sense. Okay, so it's doing some research. So one thing that came to mind is it can be hard to do this kind of thing from the browser. So if you just write browser code that's going to directly go to Reddit and try to pull some code and then display it in the browser, that's a security risk because browsers don't really like sites doing that kind of thing. So the workaround often is to have a node server that you host yourself, that you make a request to, that then serves your web page, so that your page is now loading from your node server directly. You're not directly like making requests to some other site or some other server. And then the node server is kind of doing some crawling, some web crawling to go out to Reddit and like look and get the information it needs, and then serving it down to the client. So I wouldn't be surprised if it wants us to take that kind of approach. So let's see what it says. Yes, you'll run into CORS issues with direct browser requests. Here's some solutions. Backend proxy service. That's what I was saying. Backend node server. Most reliable approach, backend server, Node Express. Fetches from Reddit. Your server adds CORS headers and serves data to your front end. Reddit sees the request from your server. No CORS issues. Your front end displays the content. So why it's best. So it's reliable, won't break. You control caching. So there's lots of reasons to do that. Anchoring your site on another site kind of makes you subject to their outages and whatnot. But if you scrape a bit, maybe save some data. We'll have to see how we approach that. So quick implementation plan, front end fetch your API server, Reddit. Alternatively, use Reddit's old API endpoint. Okay, so Reddit has API endpoints. Some developers report better core support, though it's inconsistent. Key Reddit JSON tricks. Okay, so I didn't know about old AI. So let me ask about that. So does Reddit have an API? Is that deprecated? Is it reliable? Yeah, let's just find out. So I'm just going to do some web search. So in the old days, I would now be in Google reading about Reddit and wondering if what I'm reading is the latest, greatest. Now I make Claude do all that, and it's kind of like having an assistant that can read really fast. It comes back and gives you a report. That's really how vibe coding feels to me. Like, rather than being a coder, I feel like a manager of a very talented software developer who can think very fast, but can sometimes be a little daft. So, still needs my leadership. Yes, Reddit has an official API. It's not deprecated and is reliable, but with important caveats. 2025 is active and operational. It's fully functional. Major changes since July 2023. Pricing introduced. There's a free tier for non-commercial personal projects and academic research. Paid tier, 24 cents per 1,000 API calls for commercial high usage apps. Rate limits. Free OAuth clients at 100 requests per minute. Averaged over 10 minutes. Okay, so OAuth is about authentication. So like if I wanted to sign in with my Reddit account, maybe like pull from I'll have like account information available so that I could have more of a personalized experience. We're not really interested in that right now. We just want to, whatever you see on Programmer Humor, we want to get into a feed. So it's saying that that's a pretty generous free plan. For your Reddit reader project, the free tier would be sufficient if it's for your personal use. So we say it's for personal use. We don't charge people to use it. And then if we think of a way to turn this into a paid product, we, maybe pass that cost onto a user or something. That's for personal non-commercial use. Your implement basic caching. Don't refetch on every page load. 100 requests per minute is plenty for a feature. Okay, so we can use their free API. That sounds like a good way to go, honestly. Because when you do direct web scraping, you're kind of vulnerable to them making code changes. Because like what you'll end up doing is pulling the DOM, the document object model. So that's like a hierarchical chunk of code. So you've got HTML block and then blocks inside of that, the body. And then you might have like div tags and image tags and, like all these tags in the object model, and you suss out the format, like how it renders on the page, and then you can kind of go in and pull out headlines and pull out text, right? So I write this scraper that can go read the page's format and then pull the data out. But if they ever change that format, your thing won't work. It's not smart enough to go look at what it is. It just kind of makes assumptions. So having an API is more reliable. So you can just trust that the data is going to come back in a consistent format. And, it could still break if they make a breaking change to their API, but that's way less likely. More likely that a front-end developer changes something. Reddit would probably be pretty static, so you could probably not have to worry about that. But APIs are great. Application Programming Interface. So we'll use the Reddit API. And I know we've already changed our plan. I said I was going to show how to make a web scraper. Turns out this site has an API. But the principles are the same. We will make a module that pulls the data from an API. But if there's another source that we want to pull from, maybe we'll do that after. We can make a module that can pull from the API, put it into JSON format, but then we'll make one that can go to just some website and pull the data raw and put it in JSON format. And then on the other side of our module, it won't matter where we got the data. We're just gonna show it. Okay, so let's dive in. Recommendation for personal Reddit reader: use the official API with OAuth through a backend proxy. It's reliable, well documented, and the free tier is generous enough. The JSON hack is easier, but less official and may break. Okay, so we're gonna go with it. Want to proceed with the official API approach or the simpler JSON proxy method? Let's use the official API. Let's set up a node server that gets the programmer humor data and serves it to our front end website. So we won't even save the data in the database. We'll make a query to our node server. The node server will make an API call to Reddit. Reddit will respond with probably a JSON object. We'll take that JSON object, use it to create, maybe leave it in JSON, send it to the front end and let the front end parse it. We'll figure that out when we get it, but the point is we're not going to save the data in a database. We don't need to. Reddit is our database in this case. So, all right, that's clear enough for Claude. Now, one thing to note about Claude is that they're updating Claude and his capabilities change. There was a period where he was really sharp. I really liked him. I wish that I could just have whatever version that was because he was good for smart contract development and React development. Sometimes now I have to pay a little bit more attention about the code he's writing and kind of tell him what I want more. One thing I want to explore is getting my own version of one of these AIs running on a private server so that if I find one that works really well, I could just have him be set and not, change his capacity or have the price change or have it go down. That's something that I want to do in a future project, just like have a decent computer that can handle my requests. It doesn't have to handle a million requests from around the world, just mine. If you guys are interested in that, let me know, and I'll tackle that one. Hugging Face is the website for that. Okay, looks like we're ready. Do you want to make this edit to package.json? Okay, so I never do this. I never say yes, allow all edits during this session. I look at every change it wants to make. I don't always look at them really closely, but I at least want to pause and be aware that it's making a change and not let it go too crazy. So here it's just creating the package.json. node-based app is going to have a package.json. It's basically, the main thing is that it includes your dependencies. It has some kind of information about your app that specifies where the scripts will be to start it, what the main file is, and dependencies that need to be imported. So when you do npm install, it'll pull all of these. And I apologize if you kind of know what you're doing and you're a programmer and this is like super basic, like package.json. But I'm going to be saying some of these kind of things so that people can follow along. And if you're watching this, it would be really helpful to me to know if I am taking too long in any particular part or if I'm going too fast in any particular part. So I can get an idea of the skill and interest level of the people who are actually watching this, and that lets me, gives me information about what kind of content to create in the future. So we're going to say yes, make that change. So it's creating a brand new package. It's calling it Reddit Reader. That is a fine name. And here in a second, we'll probably have a full-on node server. Okay, so recall that the main in package.json was server.js, so now we're creating that. And we're gonna scroll through here and set up a hotkey that lets me expand this easily. So, and the way that I have this set up, so this is the blank non-existent file, and this is what it's going to be like after. So this is before and after. It's showing me the diff. So it's doing all the imports for these middleware pieces that are needed, creating an Express app from this install or from this import. Express.static. Okay, so it's pretty much going to be just a static it's gonna, I believe it's gonna serve from public folder static files, which is fine. Response await get access token buffer from response. Okay, failed to get access token. Okay, so looks like we've got some call and response here to get an access token. So like any API is going to require to have a key. So it looks like we're going to have to do that too. I might have to log into Reddit and get a key. So this is kind of doing that initial handshake to make it happen. Fetch subreddit. So this is the call that will actually, or the function will actually call to get the data once everything's set up. And it would be cool, we're going to do programmer humor, just kind of hard code that, but it'd be cool if somebody could type in whichever one they want, and then we could provide kind of a custom view of that, that Reddit subreddit. Okay, so this looks all right. I have a few thoughts about the approach, about how we might want to set this up if we want to make a React front end. But I think that this is good enough to start with. So, okay, now we're making the public directory. Go ahead, just make that. Open change. Okay, so we're creating index. So this is going to be our front end. Programmer humor, Reddit reader, powered by the official API. Good placeholder to say loading posts, and then app.js. Okay, so it's creating, so it's gonna serve, so that what we have right now is a node server serving the HTML, right? And then we're gonna view that HTML in the browser, and that's fine for now, but I think where I want to take this is to have a separate like front end site that's made in React. I like how AI generates React code, and then we'll have the node server basically like an API, like reveal some endpoints, and then we'll have a React app make queries and get data and come back. And they'll be more separated that way. Okay, that's styling, that's fine. We'll just let it be our designer. So one principle that I think is really important that you learn when you're learning to code is this concept of high cohesion and loose coupling. So like mostly loose coupling, where you want to have your modules kind of loosely coupled, so they don't have a lot of code that's like very like intricately linked with another module. So if we can have the part of our code that communicates with Reddit, just do that, and it's like, okay, I communicate with Reddit and I come back and I have that information available, and then have kind of a clear boundary where I make that information available, but I'm not going to be like integrated into the front end. And then the front end is like, okay, all I care is that you have the information. So it's like, hey, backend, give me the information from Reddit. And then it receives a JSON. And it's like, great, thanks. I don't need to know anything about how you did that. I just know that I've got a JSON file now. So we can loosely couple them. Our front end doesn't have to be integrated with the Reddit data pulling part. We have a render layer, like a view layer, and then we have the back end with our model and our model and our data. So wants to make a change to app.js. What is this? It's doing something with time. So it has a function to figure out how long ago something was. Why do you need this? What's going on? Post container. So something about, okay, so it must come back in milliseconds or something, and then it wants to figure out how long ago it was. Create post element. So notice how this is creating a div. And that's kind of a violation of that loose coupling that I was talking about. I think I'm going to let it continue. So I can just, like, this is a pretty simple app so far. When you see how it works. But we're probably going to want to have it turn that into more of a data endpoint that gives us JSON, and then have a separate front end that reads that. Okay, so it wants to create an env file. This is an environment file. Usually you put your keys in here. That you don't want to check this into Git or put this on a public repo, because people, like bots will instantly see it. You might think you're okay if it's only up there for a second, but a lot of times if anybody sees your client ID, then they can go make requests as though they're you and use up your free stuff. And if you were paying for requests, it could just use up your data. So you want to be very careful with your env files. This is env.example to kind of specify that it's like in a development environment. We're going to go ahead and trust it there. Git ignore. So the first thing it did was put env in the ignore. I noticed that it doesn't have env.example, so I'm going to add that in. Yes. And let's see. So it didn't, can't actually do it that way. .example. Okay, so we will leave that like that. And what that does is when you check in with Git, anything in here, it's just going to not include that file. This is like a thing that Mac computers create. Let's move this up to be next to the other one. And then node modules are all the libraries that get installed when you do npm install, and they can be very big. So you don't want to upload them. It's also very easy for somebody who clones your repo to just type npm install, which will automatically download all of them anyway. So there's not really much value in adding those. Do you want to make this edit to readme? Yeah, whatever you want in the readme, that's fine. readme.md. MD stands for Markdown, which is a way to format text easily with just characters like pound. Okay, I've created complete Reddit reader setup. So this is doing the whole front end. So like I said, the front end and the back end are entangled here with the index and the styles being served by the node server also. But we're just going to see how it did. So get the Reddit API credentials from here. So I'm going to do this in another window in case it shows something sensitive, but all I'm doing is logging in to my stuff. Create a script. I might cut this part out. Create a script type app. Okay, so it has a button, create an app. All right, I'll show this to you so that maybe I don't have to cut it out. If I don't have to open the editor, that saves me a lot of time. So all it was is I went to the URL that it suggested pref/app, and there's this button here, are you a developer? Create an app. So I clicked it, and creating an app. Okay, we call it Reddit Reader. And this is a web app. Description, read Reddit. I don't want to give it all this information. I'm not a robot. OAuth 2 client names cannot include Reddit. Okay, so we'll call it VCV Reader, Vibe Code Ventures Reader. I'm still not a robot. I have to give it something to redirect to. This is like let's obviously not receive a lot of love. Like, look, there's no margin on the left, and this is just like, yeah, you can do this if you want. Redirect URL. How about let's put our school up. School.com/vibecode. That's easy to remember. I should have remembered that. Create app. All right. So I agree to the developer terms, the data API terms. Must also register to use the API. Do I need to do that? So look, give me a secret key. Let's quickly skim this. You must register in order to use Reddit API. Okay, ignore that for now. Hopefully this is all we need. Secret. So you guys know my secret now. I might have to cut that out. So back over here, Reddit client secret, we'll put that here. Do I have a client ID? What is that? Developers? Is that me? UI369? Oops. So if I signed in as, maybe that's me. So let's put UI369 and okay, so I updated create env from the example. Okay, so new file, .env, there we have this is an endpoint that, this is on my local machine, right? So this is kind of cool, right? This is like my local machine that is getting a bunch of data from Reddit. And it's all there. And it's obviously not very readable. But okay, how do I view this data from Reddit? How do I view this data from Reddit in a way that makes sense to a human? And it might, I think I was just loading the endpoint directly. Yeah. So that index file that it created already has some like kind of prettiness for it, right? So there you go. Buttplug.io. Happy that vibe coding is a term. But yeah, look at that. We have a local Reddit reader now. And if I wanted to customize my Reddit reading experience, I totally could. So I want to add one more feature to this. So like this is only for programmer humor, right? But what I think would be cool is if we could do something like this and have it load programmer humor, but if I put something else there, it would load something else, right? So I'm gonna be like, this is working great. Let's make a change. I want to load the URL like this and have it show programmer humor, but if I put some other subreddit there, it would show that one. So it's more of a universal Reddit reader. And you should get that concept pretty easily and hook us up. We're like well within the bounds of things that have been done many times, and so an AI like Claude has been trained on these kind of examples, so it's probably just gonna nail it. Let's see what he says. Okay, so it's just going for the change. It's not even gonna kiss my ass about how smart I am. Usually it's like, great idea. So creating a new endpoint, this little colon means that what comes after is like variable text. So like whatever string is put in here, it's going to store in a variable called subreddit, like that. Subreddit equals params. Okay, subreddit, fetch subreddit, and subreddit. Okay, that looks pretty safe. So now I know if your programming experience, like if you don't have a lot, you might look at that code and be like, I can't tell if that's going to work or not. I would say just try. Like this app.get is, you can kind of guess what this is doing. It just added 3 functions. This health check endpoint is pointless, but just sometimes you can just kind of tell. Like it's hard for me not to look at it like a programmer. Like I can read this code pretty much, but it didn't do anything like too crazy. Now it's removing some code. Why is it doing that? Server.js. So this was. We're going to remove all that now. Maybe it was there before. So it like kind of moved it up. That's odd. I don't know why it would do that, but okay, whatever. I'm still kind of trusting it. One thing we should be doing is using Git to make frequent commits so that we can roll things back. This is probably, but in other apps I'll make a point to do that so you can kind of see how Git works. All right, get Reddit subreddit from URL. Extract subreddit from URL path. So I think this is like a pretty complicated way to do it. So it's gonna, looks like it's gonna make Programmer Humor a default. Path equals window.location.path name. Okay, I don't want to get too deep into telling it how to do it. We're just gonna let it do it, and if I don't like it, we'll refactor another time. Because this video is already pretty long, or 45 minutes, and I just want to see the win. And maybe we can like look at how it approached it. So changing the cosmetics, just the name, to Reddit Reader instead of Programmer Humor. Okay. App.js. Okay, let's go for it. And that's just so it'll display what the subreddit that we're looking at is. Okay, so it says that it worked. I'm gonna go ahead and restart the server. Not sure if we have to do that, probably. Okay, well, there's Programmer Humor. Let's try JavaScript. All right, there you have it. And we should be able to go to Reddit and, okay, so here's, am I overreacting? Not even gonna read their drama, but we should be able to go to any arbitrary one and have a look. So I noticed that on Reddit, this shows an image. But here we're not seeing an image. If I click, it takes me into Reddit and I see an image. There's also all of the replies and whatnot, so you know we're not getting all that. So you know, it's showing me the upvotes, it's showing me the number of comments, but it's basically just the most surface level. This one showed an image, so it might be because with this one it's a gallery. There's actually 2 images in here, and that might display differently, but yeah, see, there's an image. So God, and the drama in this, am I overreacting? Like, I don't even want to look at this. But it basically works, right? Like, we're getting, you know, we've got it pulling information. We have a little node server running. I could host this on Vercel or somewhere and make it live, and people could come to my site and read Reddit. And if I made it an enjoyable experience somehow, you know, like better in some way, or like maybe it like scrolls automatically or something, or has some interesting search, or lets me like save it, you know, like I could add some value. I could wrap Reddit with some extra value. Maybe I get people to come look at my site. You could think of some things, you know, their API costs money, is like 24 cents per 1,000 requests. So it might not be feasible. You know, you'd have to add like a lot of value to get people to want to pay those API rates. But it might, you know, like it's a good trick. And whether or not you're trying to do it with Reddit, this basically works with anything that has an API. It would be pretty easy to tell Claude that like, okay, here's another data source with an API. I want to pull that in too. And we can talk about how to construct the code so that it's kind of reusable. Like, I already see some issues with the way that it built this node thing where the front end is very tightly coupled with the back end. It'd be better if we had those more decoupled. But I'm not going to go into all that later. That's something that I can teach and show with future examples, or if we want to expand on this app. But let me know what you think about this one. If this was too basic, if there are things I left out, if you would like me to continue with this example, if you want to see something else, I'm happy to do whatever the people need. And let me know, am I overreacting? Are you overreacting? Yeah, thanks for watching. This is Matt with Vibe Code Ventures. Keep on coding.